Thank you, CK, for coming today and also for taking your time to speak about your experiences, also about your knowledge on memory and also activism in Hong Kong. And we really appreciate that you're taking this time to do the interview with us. Before we start the interview, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do?
I'm Chiu from Hong Kong. I'm 30 years old and now I'm living in Germany. And the decision I made, probably the most important decision of my life, 10 years ago, I decided to study in Mannheim, Germany. And now I'm living in Offenburg, and at first I work as an engineer, and now I'm a full-time German teacher, especially for Hong Kong people. Another point maybe I can mention is as a Hong Konger, I am really concerned of what happened in the last 2 years. And some Germans know me because of my interview or my involvement of communicating with Germans about what's happening in Hong Kong.
Maybe you could tell us what motivated you to leave Hong Kong and settle here in Germany.
This is a rather complex decision. And I had a lot of considerations. For example, I wanted to study abroad as a child already. So I kind of knew that I will leave Hong Kong at some point of time. And also as an engineer, I study engineering in Hong Kong. Germany is probably one of the best countries to choose to practice my knowledge. And of course, I met my girlfriend in Hong Kong, and now she's my wife, and she comes from Offenburg. So that's pretty clear that I would stay in Germany after my study.
Thank you. Could you maybe tell us also what is happening right now in Hong Kong? Because it's all in the news, and I think we all know that there is a bit of a problematic situation. But maybe you could elaborate a little bit more for us.
And turning itself into a dictatorship, and what we can see, what is happening in Hong Kong is purely a result of a repression, incompatibility of two systems and two mindset. Yeah.
Thanks, CK. Going back to the history of Hong Kong, it used to be a British colony, and when did that change? How did it change?
We all know the handover happened in 1997, and I have to admit I was only a kid. I was 7 years old, so I really couldn't give you a lot of description of how I felt. But I still remember the image of sitting in the couch and watching the ceremony, the rain. As an innocent kid, I really did not realize the importance of this ceremony, of this event.
And do you think that Hong Kong is still kind of a colony today?
I have no academic background. I believe that there is a definition of colony. I really cannot judge if the definition fits into the case of Hong Kong. But my answer would be yes, Hong Kong is still a colony. And there are several conditions or several arguments why I say Hong Kong is still a colony. First, we had and also we have no choice of how we arrange our living condition, the participation in politics. Hong Kongers have no control of their life. And this is maybe one condition or one definition of colony. Also, some people call it the return of Hong Kong. Actually, the real terminology here is the handover. So the governance of Hong Kong was not really given back to the people and to the country. It was given rather than to a political body which has control over all aspects of our lives. So yes, yeah, this is the 2 points that I can think of why I feel like Hong Kong is still a colony.
And now, going back to the 90s again, can you tell us how Hong Kong changed after it was sort of handed over to China in 1997?
After the handover, in the first few years, there were really no noticeable changes at all. We felt so normal, and it were like the ceremony never had happened. And I mean, I was too young. I was only 7, as I mentioned. I really could not tell. But one main thing that I can really share is as a child or a teenager, I really could notice the shifting of humor. Like when I watch a film or if I watch TV and all different kinds of medium, they at the beginning or before the handover, they were constantly making fun of the fact that mainland will be the one who has all the control and all the power. They're saying, okay, the policemen from China, they're gonna catch us, have control over Hong Kong, and people will force us to kind of learn the words from Mao, stuff like that. And I really could notice that people are not really making this kind of joke anymore, and it got kind of less and less as we realize that what was a joke is now not a joke anymore. Yeah, maybe this is something that I really personally noticed.
Thank you, CK, for your thoughts and also sharing your experience with us. What do you think about Beijing's government's proposal on erasing the British influences in Hong Kong, for example, changing street names?
As a Hong Konger who has lived in Germany for more than 10 years, the first thing that come across my mind is always the news in Germany. So I try to compare. Maybe it's not a good comparison, but still I have the same feelings that, for example, Germans are really still confronted, and also they have a difficult time to deal with the history and also the history of Nazi, and of course all the related symbol and signs and yeah. For me, I can definitely understand that some people are feeling really uncomfortable, and also it is kind of a trauma for them to see the symbol and sign and also the damage of Nazi. But for me, the identity, Hong Kong, and the colony time, the colonization of Hong Kong is really a big part of the identity. And I have to say, Hong Kong people never suffer from colonization. So the point is, I, as an engineer, believe that we have to keep all the truth and also respect the history, how Hong Kong developed itself and how Hong Kong having their own way of life as a part of the history. We should not erase it at all. Changing street names doesn't make sense, and erasing sign of British colony and influences, I don't think that this is something so negative that people would want to remove it. I don't think that it makes sense.
And for example, like the government is trying to make the Mandarin language the official language rather than Cantonese, for example. And what do you think about this mainlandization of Hong Kong's local culture?
As I mentioned, Hong Kong is dying, and if you understand the political situation in Hong Kong, I would say China is developing itself into a dictatorship, and there are a lot of measures they can take to eradicate the culture in Hong Kong. And the mainlandization of Hong Kong, one of the measures of Beijing is definitely forcing the people to give up their own language and culture. So this is something that I really hate, and I personally feel really upset that the language is always treated as some kind of a minor language, or the dialect of some kind. This is definitely something that we have to pay attention to keep our language as a conveyor of our culture, and I think this is something really, really bad.
Going back to 2012, the Beijing-backed government in Hong Kong tried to introduce a national or a patriotic education program in primary and secondary schools. Can you share your thoughts on this with us? I mean, how does this program differ from typical history classes that, for example, you had in school?
Yeah, patriotism is something that I really cannot understand. I mean, I'm proud of my identity as a Hong Konger. I'm proud of my language and culture and everything. But this is something that you can never teach. You can never force someone to love something. Like, this is something that you have to induce the feelings by getting to know the people, and also the positive aspect of your life, and also your home country. And I remember I had a history class. It was almost half a year. It was talking about Hong Kong and how it developed, and also the history that we had as a colony. But it was rather neutral, and it makes really no sense to force the younger generation to have some kind of image of China. It will not work, and even if it works, it is definitely something that you can treat it as a poison to the mind, because, as I said, patriotism makes just no sense.
So my next question will be on commemoration, because every year people commemorate the protests and the massacre that happened at the Tiananmen Square on June 4th, 1989. Do you think this commemoration is important to Hong Kong people?
I believe this commemoration is still really important. First, I think a lot of Hong Kong people, and also a lot of Chinese, they had really a lot of hope at that specific moment. They had the fantasy, illusion, or how you name it, doesn't matter. They really had the hope that China will become democratic at that specific moment. But we all know the result, and it was a failed attempt, and it ended with inhumane suppression. And I would say it's the first wake-up call for a lot of people in Hong Kong, and they kind of realize that there are values that we love and we treasure, and this is something that I still think is important to kind of remember, that there were a group of people that were fighting in China for democracy, and yeah, this is also a symbolic action. Maybe there's a discussion in Hong Kong, or there was, if we should still do it, and because a lot of Hong Kong people think that, okay, I would not have the illusion that China will become democratic one day, and we should kind of cut up all the connection with China to show our autonomy and also independency. But I still disinterest and hate. You cannot mix them up with unimportance. It is still important, the way China develops and the way China kind of influences Hong Kong is still inevitable. In this case, this commemoration is definitely not something that can change the situation, but still to remember it, to having the time to reflect on this event is still mentally important.
So the protests ended violently in 2019 and 2020. Do you think these protests ought to be commemorated?
Yes, these protests should be commemorated. Definitely. I believe this is the last resort that we can remind ourselves and kind of force ourselves to stay in the right direction, to know the difference between people who support and love freedom, human rights, and democracy. Even though the situation is hard and we are now living in injustice, in fear, this is really the last things that we can hold on to. And we also mentioned the measures that were taken by the Beijing government. Of course, we can foresee that the truth and the history will be kind of washed out inches by inches. And if we have no resistance at all, no commemoration, nothing, I believe this process can happen a lot quicker than we thought. And this is really something that we have to keep in order to identify ourselves as Hong Kong.
Many authoritarian governments all over the world punish citizens who do not show sufficient respect, so-called respect for the flag, the anthem, or other national symbols. And recently a national anthem law has been passed in Hong Kong. Can you evaluate the situation? What are your thoughts on this?
Again, I have to use another comparison. And this comparison really, I don't know if it's appropriate, but it popped up to my mind. I remember a few years ago there was a football match, and Germany was kind of in the championship, and some people in Germany, they put the German flag on their car and maybe on the door. And there are people in Germany, they kind of remove the flags and also sticking a note, okay, you should not do it as a German, and yeah, stuff like that. And it was for me really unimaginable that people are so ashamed of their flag. I think the crucial point is the association. So a lot of people, they see the German flag, they kind of associate it with the Nazi history and the time during the World War II, what Germany did to other countries and the Jewish people. But in this case, you can say the respect and also the love of the flag or of a symbol of a country is really based on how people see it. And if we see the Chinese flag as Hong Kong people, we do not feel good. We really do not feel good. This is something that you know what is happening in mainland China. You know the fear, the suffering, and the problems now we are facing politically all came from China, and there's no way that you can force people to kind of have some certain respect of the flag. And this is another measure the Chinese government would introduce in order to force people to pay respect to the flag, but it will fail, and it is something that I really cannot imagine, like this kind of law introduced without democracy, without the agreement of the people. This is a pure measure of punishing people that are not aligned with their mindset.
And now, because you live in Germany, can you tell us something about the Hong Kong diaspora here in Germany?
According to the unofficial statistic in Germany, there should be around 3,000 Hong Konger in Germany. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. If you take a look of, let's say, England or Canada or America, they have a huge community built by Hong Kong. And I have to say the community here in Hong Kong is still has not reached the critical mass that we can form some kind of concentric community. I found the first association in name of Hong Kongers 2 years ago, and I really feel like there are still a lot of limitations. We do not have enough people that can kind of be responsible for the community work, and but it is still a really big task for me to do things that we mentioned, commemoration, and kind of to hold on to our history and the real truth, what happened in the last 2 years. And this is probably what I can say about the community of Hong Konger in Germany. And of course, I participated in events like some protest and also different kind of events, giving interviews and also talking with other Germans. And maybe the motivation, I guess a lot of people in Germany, Hong Kong and in Germany, they feel really hopeless. Like they made the decision to leave their home country, and now they have to watch what's happening and could not really help. I mean, you cannot really help even if you're in Hong Kong, but still you feel like you are isolated from your home country, and if you're experiencing and you really know what's happening in Hong Kong, then this kind of hopelessness drives you to do all the stuff you can do, and this is definitely the biggest motivation for me, that I want to help, I cannot, so what I can do in Germany, everything I can do, then I will try.
And just one more question to finish off our interview. What do you think, how can people commemorate a difficult past if there is no agreement on what happened in the past?
If we don't have a common ground for discussion and also for communication, there will not be possible to commemorate the difficult part of the history. And I think the challenge we now are facing, actually since years, is the information technology advances. We thought that, okay, people are getting better informed and we should be able to make better decision, and we should have breakthroughs in a way that we can deliver information and exchange our thoughts. But we all know that with Facebook and all different social media and technology we have, we kind of drive ourselves into certain and different information bubbles. So just a quick example, if I check my parents' phone as I was in Hong Kong, I somehow could understand that why it's not possible for them to understand what the younger people are thinking, because they are trapped in the informations that they received from other people, and the source are really not identifiable as you can believe, and it reinforced their mind, and because of fake news and all different kind of false information, that the people in Hong Kong are, if they are asking for democracy, is bad, and they are driven by other foreign power and they have some evil agenda. And yeah, I would say this is really the biggest problem of our society now, and especially in Hong Kong if we cannot break through these kind of bubbles, the wall that's built by an algorithm of social media and the way we communicate, then we will never have a way to come to an agreement politically.
Thank you very much, and thank you a lot for your time, CK. We really appreciate your thoughts on this topic and also sharing your experiences with us, which must be also very difficult at times. And I'm very sure that the students will be very thankful for this as well. And thanks a lot.